not know is that we're a training ground, a breeding ground for citizen journalists and for interns. And we have at any given time 3 interns working for the news. And we're now expanding the job description of the interns to include production for Talk of the Town. So as part of this effort, we are trying to raise $18,900, and we are looking for help. So if you think this is something you identify with, something you would like to support, talk to me after this show. And we do have a former intern here hiding in the booth back there doing the live stream. Welcome, Nick Steinig, please. He's waving. All right. A little bit of housekeeping. Remember, this is a live show, so your cheering and clapping is more than welcome, but it also means that your leisurely stroll to the restroom will be shared by the world. So you have 15 minutes to get that done. We also have questions to the panelists, and there are question cards on your table. I will collect those questions in the next 15 minutes before the show, and I hope you have lots of them to the panelists. The topic is the Live Local Act. This is a law by the state that tries to promote affordable housing, and it does so by preempting county, city planning. So this is what it's about. Please have questions. I will collect them. It's great to have you here. Enjoy this Saturday at the Fogartyville.
Good morning, folks. My name is Ariel. I am the director here at Fogartyville. I want to welcome you for coming this morning. And our Talk of the Town is the last one for the season, but we'll be kicking it off again next season. If you guys are here for the first time, We are a nonprofit organization. We are WSLR and Fogartyville. Our radio station is right on the other side. Purple Mike's here. He'll give you a tour if you want. It's WSLR.org, 96.5 FM. And this is our Media and Art Center, Fogartyville. We have a lot of things that we do like this, but we also have a lot of music, primarily music during the evenings. Great bands. We have a great band that's coming here tomorrow. Tatum and Neighborly, they're here for the first time. We have monthly singer-songwriters. Our songwriter series is on Monday, this coming Monday. That starts at 7 o'clock. This is our calendar. Take one home. You can also join our newsletter at WSLR.org. We give you a weekly reminder of what we have here. Our wonderful communications director is Kathleen over there. She sends you a lovely newsletter every week. Really well done. And just keeps you informed. So once again, welcome. We're going to start the show in a few minutes. Thank you.
Minus 2.5 minutes. And Leon Kerber says, we are ready. 1 minute to go. Countdown begins.
This is my least favorite part. Just
The
let's
anticipation.
immigration and ICE enforcement.
And
20 seconds. And we are getting ready. You are tuned to WSLR LP 96.5 FM in Sarasota and WBPV LP 100.1 FM in Bradenton. The opinions expressed on this show are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect those of WSLR, its staff, or volunteers. Coming to you from the Fogartyville Community Media and Arts Center in front of a live audience, it's an hour of analysis and debate of the events and issues that Sarasota is talking about. This is Talk of the Town.
Florida's Live Local Act was created to address the state's urgent need for more affordable housing by offering incentives to developers who promise to create more affordable units. But the state's top-down approach is clashing with local visions for growth and infrastructure. Pushback and legal challenges are mounting, including from the Sarasota County Commission, which recently voted against multiple Live Local projects. Why has a law with good intentions hit a major roadblock? Why is Sarasota, against the advice of its own county attorney, now mounting a challenge? And how will the battle between the state and municipalities over control of local development play out? All this and more on today's Talk of the Town. Good morning. I'm so happy to see you all here. I'm your host, Carrie Seidman. Thank you. As Johanna said, we're coming to you live from the Fogartyville Community Media and Arts Center, and I want to thank all of those who are here in attendance, as well as those who are listening at home and watching us on our YouTube live stream. Today, as I said, we're going to be talking about Florida's Live Local Act, what it is, how it's changed, what its intentions were, and how it's shaping up currently to be a battle between the state and local municipalities. And I'm really fortunate to have with me today 3 people who are very well versed on this topic, much more so than I am. But they come at it from 3 different angles, one as a citizen advocate, one as a journalist, and one is an elected official. So that should give us a real breadth of understanding of this issue. So let me introduce them now. Our first panelist to my right has 4 decades of leadership experience in operations, finance, and information technology, primarily in the energy distribution and services industries. Matt Procaccini has helped found and operate and grow several energy companies, including 2 of the country's largest electrical distribution companies. He's now the CFO of New England's largest electrical lighting and lighting controls manufacturers rep agency. And more relevant to his participation today, Matt recently helped form StayTRU, T-R-U, that stands for Tatum Ridge United, a 401c4 neighborhood association with a mission to protect open space against unfair land development efforts. With more than 300 members and 1,500 registered voters, StayTRU is the fastest growing advocacy group in Sarasota's East County. Please welcome to Talk of the Town, Matt Procaccini.
Thank you very much.
Our next guest is a watchdog investigative journalist with Sarasota's nonprofit digital news platform, Suncoast Searchlight. Derek Gilliam has covered courts and crime, mental health, real estate, economic development, and general business issues for news publications throughout the state. Prior to coming to the Searchlight, he focused on real estate development and local businesses for the Sarasota Herald-Tribune, where his story about a case of real estate fraud led to the arrest of the culprit and the closing of a legal loophole identified in his reporting. A student of the University of Florida whose work has won numerous statewide journalism awards, Derek has lived in Sarasota since 2021. He's a good friend, a colleague, and we recently collaborated on a story together, which was great fun. Thanks for being here, Derek.
Oh, thanks, Carrie. Thanks for having me.
And for anyone who has lived in Sarasota for any length of time, our final guest needs no introduction. Tom Knight was elected the District 3 County Commissioner in November of 2024 after serving in law enforcement for 34 years. He was elected Sarasota County Sheriff in 2008 and served for 12 years before retiring, becoming one of the first law enforcement executives in the country to create recovery programs in the jail. Tom has been a resident of Sarasota County since moving here with his family in 1973. He graduated from Venice High School and Manatee Junior College, now State College of Florida. And he and his wife, Tracy, who's in the audience, still live in Venice and have 2 grown daughters. Thank you so much for being
Carrie.
here.
Thank
Can I
you.
call you Tom?
Absolutely. Yep.
So we're going to dive right in, and I'd like to get started. I'm going to have Derek, who's kind of really very well versed about the Live Local Act, give us a little recap of what exactly is the Live Local Act, how has it changed since it started, and where are things at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. So Live Local was first passed in 2023. It was initially viewed as a way for boosting affordable housing. Required 40% of the units in a project to be designated affordable for 30 years. It would bypass zoning, any type of county commissioner decision, any type of planning board, and go directly to staff, and they would have to approve it administratively if it met the requirements. And the requirements at first were pretty narrow. It was like industrial, commercial, and mixed-use zoning, and it was really targeted towards more city centers type areas. Not many people took advantage of it in the 2023. It wasn't until they started, and then pretty much every year since 2023, the legislature has tweaked it, made it easier for developers to get approval for projects, and expanded the zoning designations that would qualify under Live Local. Now, if a zoning designation has a commercial use by right, even if it's largely a residential use, some jurisdictions are looking at it as, okay, then Live Local is allowed. That was one of the decisions that the county commission decided not to follow, and they because I think they had 7 projects, and 6 of them were in these rural zoning designations, which are typically allow 1 unit per 5 acres or 2 units or 1 unit per 2 acres, and that includes a project over in Tatum Ridge where it's a agricultural large estate, and they were trying to put these very large apartment projects. One of them had 2,250 units it was going to be right next to Fruitville Road, and I'm not sure if that road would, if that, I don't know, I think there's already enough problems on Fruitville that people are already kind of not happy with how development's been paced out that way anyway, and then to drop another potentially 4,000 cars right there in rural East Sarasota County, it would definitely receive some pushback.
Yeah, we're going to get into the ramifications of what all these projects could cause. Tom, I'm going to turn to you because, as Derek said, the commission has denied 6 of 7 applications, most recently the one next to Tatum Ridge. And you have kind of led the way on the commission, I would say, in kind of pushing back and mounting this challenge. Tell us what's behind your thinking and why, at this point, you were willing to take a stand on this.
Well, as people know me, I was your sheriff, I'm pretty much work for the citizens, and I believe in home rule, and I believe in local communities being able to find their way, who they want to be, and local people elect their local public officials simply to speak for them. That's what representation really is all about. And so Sarasota County is one of 67 counties, and I used to say, we're not Okeechobee County or Hamilton County or Miami-Dade County. We are Sarasota County. We have our own people who live here who want things their way. And at the end of the day, the local board, county commission, should answer to that and for that. So I wouldn't say that we specifically denied anything. I think we made a policy decision because the law is set in place about interpretation. And I think a lot of it is we don't have the ability to really say we approve or disapprove. If we did, the legislative body would not be taking away our ability as local commissioners to make that say. So I think we made a policy decision on what our interpretation of the law is. And like Derek said, I think the law's original intent when put into place was pure. It's how the law is interpreted locally and by different land use attorneys and by our own attorneys in-house. And we get so many different ideas, so many different judgments from so many different land use attorneys that it doesn't really have that clarity. So we as a board, we made a decision that we were going to make a policy decision for our attorney about what we believed the intent of that law was, and that if we do get called into litigation, we would expect our county attorney to defend us or make a determination that you can get deck action and let a judge decide if the use of that property, say Tatum Ridge, was meeting the pure intent of what that law is, of the way the legislative body wanted it to be. So that's just where we're at with it, and that's why I brought it up, I don't know, a couple months ago. I just wanted to be on the record that I represent these people. I don't work for Tallahassee. And when I was your sheriff and here now, there's 67 counties, and we're different. And to have a law like that and the interpretation from Key West to Pensacola being so different, I just wanted to take a little bit of a stand and say that we're Sarasota County, and you have at least 1 of 5 commissioners, I believe now 5 all voted on it.
Were you confident that your fellow commissioners were, well, and not all of them did.
No, absolutely not. And but that's what elected officials are for, right? To have dialogue.
But in this last vote on the Tatum Ridge project, were you surprised? Did you know you could count on having at least 2 others?
No, because with sunshine, we can't talk to each other. So no, I wasn't, but I certainly wanted to be on the mark of what my thoughts were. So go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, I was just going to say that what the commission did was they said in OUE and RE, which is open use estate and residential estate, those 2 zoning districts, we're not going to allow live local. They didn't directly say no Tatum Ridge.
Right.
They said open use estate and rural, residential estate, those are not commercial uses. Right. Those are not, that's what their argument is that those are agricultural, rural zoning designations where you want large houses and that typically will have a small farm on it.
Right.
And to maintain the rural heritage of East County, that was what their decision was we're not seeing those as commercial uses, even though those zoning designations allow things like animal boarding, like plant nurseries, veterinarian clinics, stuff like that is allowed in the zoning designation. Probably, I think their lawyer will likely argue that these are farm activities and that they're not commercial uses. And there was a 2026 amendment that might allow them to make that argument that did exempt farm activities from and I don't know if the governor signed it yet, so.
No, it's James
Let-
Buchanan
let-
did, but yeah, and just real quick, what
Yeah,
he
go
was
ahead.
saying is the interpretation of some attorneys was, well, like Derek was saying, there's certain type of, quote, commercial business out there, so therefore it's commercial. And my thought when I was talking to my board was, well, we could go into Harbor Acres and find an attorney that is working out of his or her house, and now we can put Live Local in the middle of Harbor Acres if we want to tear a house down and buy it as a government and put Live Local on it. So it's just interpretation, and I just wanted to be on the mark that, my interpretation was what Derek explained was much
Right.
more than just the narrow view of the Live Local Act.
Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about your group, why it formed, and in particular the Tatum Ridge project, and why you felt strongly that that you needed to mount a challenge to that?
So I've only been out in Tatum Ridge for about 5 years, but it's a neat little area. It's a little slice of heaven in that it's pretty close to 75. We're only about a couple of miles, but it's still got that old Florida charm. Large 5 acre type of properties. We're fortunate to have a 200+ acre golf course, which was set aside and designated as open space into perpetuity back in 1999. So when I bought, I did my research and I thought this is a nice place to live and it's protected. The open space is protected. And not long after I bought, I realized that might not be true. And we found ourselves battling 2 different comprehensive plan amendment attacks upon that land, which came out of nowhere. I literally got a phone call one night from some person whose name I still don't know, and said that, hey, do you know they're looking to put 400 homes on those acres? And by the way, another phone call, do you know that they're looking to put warehousing and industrial buildings on that land? I didn't know. So we formed StayTRU. StayTRU was a way for us to get folks working together because we hadn't. When you live in a smaller community, there's only 162 homes. Not everybody knows each other, and that was certainly the case back when this all started. And so we formed StayTRU for Tatum Ridge United because we wanted to make our efforts more than just our little development. There's a lot of folks that live all around the golf course who would be negatively impacted by this. And we were doing good work. Tom and the commissioners, kudos to Tom, really led the effort, and we won back in May of last year. The first CPA was denied, 5-0. We didn't see that coming. I thought we were going to lose because it was the case here in Sarasota for many years. You guys know this, that the developers ruled, and I figured we were sunk. But to Tom's credit, he stood forward, and Mark Smith and Joe Nunder stepped up, and Teresa and Ron also voted with PAC. So I thought that was great. We won. We literally had a party planned. We thought we won, and then we heard about Live Local, and that was a very scary, still is, because it bypasses, as you said, our ability as citizens to determine how we want to live. And it puts that decision in the hands of Tallahassee. And that was very frightening, and it still is frightening. And so we've had to get attorneys, raise some money, and we're working to try to protect our little slice of heaven.
And the project also went from 400 single-family homes to 2,250 apartment units on the 200 acres. So
With 4,000 parking slots. It's, again, it's it's pretty, there's horses and cows and chickens and
Right.
pigs, and it's a different, 2,250 homes is different.
So I think a lot of us would agree that is an inappropriate interpretation of the law. Tom, what do you see as inappropriate, or is this just a bad law completely, and it shouldn't, it's not doing what it was meant to do?
Exactly. And I think the intent is pure. We do have a housing problem, affordable housing problem in the state of Florida. We have it here in Sarasota County. It's always a challenge. We want our law enforcement officers, our firefighters, our people who work every day. You know, you always hear the emotional ones, teachers, but there's a lot of people who work construction, block masons and stuff. There's a problem, and but it's a national problem, and you don't cure the problem with a 67 county law that takes away the right of the local communities to try to resolve it. If there was a magic bullet to resolve it, it would have already been done without any political intervention out of Tallahassee. So yeah, but I think that the intent of the law was pure, but then these are how these things need a cure to them with new laws or modified laws. I do understand, and I've read it, but I don't know if it's exactly the way we would want it, but James Buchanan has tweaked it. His committee has done something with it. Is it going to be perfect? Who knows? It will be interpreted again, but it hasn't been signed yet.
This is the new amendment
It's
that's
a new,
being
would be a change, a
proposed.
modification to try to give a little bit more clarity on the intent.
It seems pretty minor from
it's-
what I've read. I'm not sure that it's going to solve
I
the
agree, but you
issue.
take anything, right? And
Yeah.
so what it shows me is in Tallahassee politically, the legislative body's starting to feel a little bit of the community's push now. So when they're trying to tweak it a little bit, that's a clue, right? And so, okay, we're feeling it. We need to start tweaking a little bit. But at the end of the day, a 67 county law like this is not the answer.
Right.
Great intent, poor implementation. There's no question about the need for attainable housing. But when the law was written back in '23, its stated intent was to help folks and put housing where people work. And of the 7 projects, 6 are far outside of where people work. So something happened from the great intention to the implementation of the law.
Yeah, the intention was to go on like old warehouse sites, to go into industrial zoning and allow residential projects, and then set aside 40% of the units for affordable housing, and the other 60% could be market rate. Now, I do have a question about the affordable housing component of it, and whether, because it allows up to 120,
Right,
120%.
and I
Okay.
want to talk about that in a minute, I do, of whether that would really solve our problem or not. But given what you're all saying about what's appropriate, it leads me to ask you, Tom, about the approval of the rezone of the Sarasota Square Mall, which seems like it would have been a perfect opportunity for affordable housing or a live local type situation. It's accessible. It's a mall, so it's not right next door to any neighborhood, any rural property. Why was that project approved, and was that a missed opportunity?
Well, that's pre-Tom. So I really don't know
I'm
the
not
mind.
holding you personally responsible.
Yeah, I know. You know, who knows what goes on behind closed doors? I know a lot goes on behind closed doors, but all I know is what I know now. And like Derek said, is you know these were designed to go into Tracy and I live in Venice by the air. We're near the airport, and there's a large industrial area near the airport. A lot of empty buildings. The infrastructure's in, the water systems are in, the septic systems are in. That's what the intent of the law is. You know, I think Manatee County just approved one just north of the airport up in the Televest area. A lot of industrial up in there. That's what the intent is in a core where there's everything is in place. So Sarasota Square Mall, you know, Carrie, I never really looked at it. I was running a campaign at that time trying to win when that was all going down. Would it be a great location for something? Yeah, I think it would have been, but I didn't have any say in that one.
Wasn't the idea also that these would be on public transportation lines? Not that we have great public transit to
Right.
begin with, but
But certainly in urbanized areas, we have more. Breeze runs
Right.
through Sarasota a lot, down in Venice. If you look at our Breeze routes as a county, US 41 is a main corridor. So when you get down in my neck of the woods, Ogden Road off US 41 bypass, big industrial park there, empty tin buildings sitting there, infrastructure's in, water systems are in, it's right next to the Venice airport. That's what I believe the intent of Live Local is, not to go out into Venice Farms, Tatum Ridge, and exploit a law.
Right. This is WSLR's Talk of the Town, and I'm your host, Carrie Seidman, and we're hearing from Commissioner Tom Knight, journalist Derek Gilliam, and citizen activist Matt Procaccini about the Live Local Act and affordable housing. Now, last week, the commission sought a legal opinion from an outside attorney, I'm told, since the county's own attorney's interpretation was that there was not an avenue to push back on this. Go ahead, Derek.
I was going to say the county attorney provided two. He seemed to, in my opinion, he tried to make everyone happy. He gave an opinion that said, if he did express that it would be difficult to challenge, but he did also lay out another more broad view of the law, where he said that if this is a mostly residential area, that if the courts interpret it that way, then we probably could, my understanding. But he did explicitly say he does think if the judge buys an argument that it's a strict language, then he thought it'd be a tough road to battle, like a tough fight in court. So he gave both views, and this latest one I read, it's like a 15 pages. It's from a law firm up in Tallahassee. You're alluding to the legal opinion. It really just says what the law is, and it points out some of the controversial. There's actually several cases I referenced in one of my stories. In Hollywood, Florida, one of the developers tried to build a building that would have been like 100 feet taller than everything else, and he was pointing to something that had a special exception, and there was a lawsuit involving that, and that's still at the District Court of Appeals. And it just kind of went through the history of it, and it just laid out how they read the law, which I thought you guys could probably have just read my story. So, but.
And Tom mentioned, and Derek used too, that when the law was passed, there wasn't a lot of traction. And part of that, as I understand it, is that some communities, some counties and maybe some cities, kind of played a little bit with their titles of their zoning districts to avoid Live Local implementation. So if the titles say we're commercial, they would maybe change that to residential. And so the law writers tried to fix that. And in trying to fix it, they made it worse. Because things that are residential, you can drive down the streets and there's oaks over the trees, over the roads, and there's cows and chickens. It's not commercial here, but because in our zoning district, and Tom, you mentioned there's a lot of different zoning districts across the state, each one's unique. You might be able to have a pet boarding. Does that really make the whole area commercial? And that's where this started to fall apart because the law wasn't getting any traction. And the other thing we need to notice is that it's a lot easier to build on raw land, a lot easier, a lot more profitable to build on raw land than to have to tear down an existing building, maybe have to redo the infrastructure, maybe have to remediate the property. So if I were looking to make a lot of money, I'd much rather build on raw land.
So, Tom, how far is the commission willing to go with this? I know Hillsborough County has sued the state, saying that the Live Local Act is unconstitutional. Is that something that Sarasota would consider joining, or how far are you willing to take this?
Well, one, the attorney out of Tallahassee pretty much explained the law, like they said. So there's so many different thoughts on the law from different attorneys and attorneys' offices, and I think we were just trying to get some real clarity where we're at. One of five, do I think that I would support suing a state? No. I think that at the end of the day, when you sue the state, you're speaking for the will of the people. The will of the people got to decide who they vote for. And at the end of the day, suing the state, I don't see change anything. currently under this administration. We'll see what the next administration does. Would I support spending that type of money? We just spent money to get a brief back from an attorney's office in Tallahassee. It really didn't tell us anything we didn't already know, is to explain the law. So I don't like getting us involved with those things. That costs a lot of money, and it creates a lot of, you end up upsetting your legislative delegation, who we rely on for a lot of other things too. But at the end of the day, the citizens of the state will eventually have to say to the legislative body, we've had enough. And how long that's going to take, I don't know, but that's what elections cure.
And we're talking about live local, which is a big deal, big deal. But there are other things coming that are even as big, if not bigger, which is an attack on home rule, which, Tom, you mentioned. And I agree with you, Tom. I was never very much involved in political stuff. I was raising a family and doing my day job. And I am seeing that it's important for folks to pay attention to what's happening up in Tallahassee and to get involved, because there are decisions getting made that are not in our best interest.
I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit. There are some that say live local is an overdue reform of local zoning rules that hamper affordable housing construction. What's your opinion, I'll ask each of you, about live local overriding local planning and permitting? And are there any instances when preemption by the state is a good thing, it's a beneficial thing? Tom?
I never liked preemption from the state on anything, but I would say this is, that sounds really good in theory, but the comprehensive plan, the 2050 plan, have had so many exceptions given to it over the years by county commissioners that our plan doesn't look like what the design of this county is supposed to be like going back to 2002 anyhow. So 2050, the comprehensive plan, I mean, I brought it up about 18 months ago about, do we want to have an independent private land use attorney's office look at our comprehensive plan that was put into place by the citizens, who's nationally renowned as what that plan was going to look like for Sarasota County, Florida, back in the early 2000s, to be the premier county in the state. Well, when you give exceptions after exceptions after exceptions, and I've done it too. I've given exceptions on land uses that it is what it is, but if you don't stick by the plan, it doesn't matter. So whether they want changed anyhow, the plan's virtually extinct anyhow. So it's pretty much exceptions make the decisions. And that's what we should be able to do with this. Live local should not be prohibiting us from us deciding, home rule, if Tatum Ridge is the right place to build attainable housing.
Well, I would point to other preemptions the state already does on affordable housing. They tell cities and counties that they can't require a development project to have affordable housing. And why are they preempting counties from requiring affordable housing at the same time as they're forcing them to approve these projects that do not actually, I don't think they would be what many people would call affordable housing. They're up to 120% of the area median income. In Sarasota, for a family of four, that's more than $130,000.
Let's get into that aspect a little bit, because studies have shown that our real affordable housing issue is for folks who are below workforce salaries and income. And it's probably not very likely that any of these developers are going to create housing that fills that need.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, man.
And for that reason, I don't think the Live Local Act is effective. Even in its original form, I don't think it's effective. And I think that I'm more of a carrot than a stick guy. If you give incentives for folks to do the right thing, that's better than taking things and punishing all of us here in this county and taking away our right to control our destiny. I think that the state could have done a variety of this. Look, there's a lot of empty apartments in this county already, and they're building them all over the place. What would have prevented Tallahassee from saying to those apartment owners for vacant units, we'll give you an incentive, a tax incentive for something that's already built. Why do we have to bulldoze existing or new land when there's thousands of empty units? That's a carrot, and I think that's a better way to go.
And on
That's
top
a
of
great
that,
point.
like you're saying, is we have to remember, and Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, is of Live Local, only 40% of the apartments being built are for Live Local. The other 60% are market value. And so you're over 50% of what's going to be built will go market value. Only 40% will be held to Live Local over the average area median income.
Isn't there already a glut of market-priced apartments? I mean, that are
There is
empty?
out where
That's
we
what,
are,
yeah, and
for
that's
sure.
the issue is there's a lot of marketplace, but they can't afford it. So that's the carrot and the stick type of thing. So go ahead, Derek, I cut you off.
No, I was just going to say that, I mean, 120%, I mean, isn't market rate 100%? Like, all of them are market rate apartments, and I think there could be an argument to be made, and maybe I can be convinced, because I am still reporting on this topic. I don't want to pretend like I've decided all these things, but I would love to talk to some developers about why they think Live Local does solve the affordable housing problem. I know that the theory is that as you build more units, the older units become more affordable. Like it's a supply-demand type argument. I just know that there's plenty of apartments that aren't renting the units that they already have built because it makes sense for them from either a tax advantage or from other reasons to keep them empty. And if you
Well,
look,
with the incentives they're getting, state and local, even federal incentives, it's okay if the building stays somewhat empty. They've already made enough money on the project.
Right. Derek, can you give us some idea of what 80% of median income looks like? I know I was talking to our new news reporter here at WSLR who just moved here from Tallahassee and had a heck of a time trying to find an affordable place to live. And he said, you know, the cheapest he could find, a one-bedroom apartment, was $1,500, and that was far out from the city core.
yeah. When I first moved here, that was what I paid. I had a one-bedroom apartment. It was over there in the apartments off Target, right behind the Target on Fruitville Road, Paramount 160, I believe. That Paramount 50 was what it was. My rent went up for the first year, $500. I moved here in 2021, and they wanted for the same unit up to $2,000. For a family for one person, the average median income for our community is $60,000. So even at 80% AMI, $60,000, you're not supposed to spend more than $30,000, and I wasn't making $60,000 when I first moved here. But yeah, that's what the AMI is for our area, and it is really hard to find affordable housing. I'm surprised. I'm actually kind of hopeful because that seems like the prices are coming down a little bit.
Well, that was the cheapest he could find,
I
and
know.
that was like Englewood, Nokomis.
Oh,
you
wow.
know, that was
Yeah.
a long drive, no public transportation
Right.
kind of situation.
And that's another facet to this conversation is we've seen a tremendous amount of money come into Florida over the last 6 years. I mean, I think Florida is the number one, and Texas is number two. I think it's $21 billion of wealth that has come into this state over the last few years, you know, driven a lot by COVID and a lot of other factors. But what happens is everything goes up in cost. That's what happens. And normally in a normal business cycle, there's a top and then there's another trough that comes. And that's happening right now. You're seeing a lot of apartments, rents are starting to come down, so here comes Tallahassee not wanting to let the market do its thing and forcing projects that make no sense and don't make anybody happy. They don't even solve the problem they say they're going to solve.
I think a lot of it boils down, Matt, you said earlier about they made their money, but in that industry, you never make enough money. They want more and more and more, right? But that's the world we live in, right? I don't have a problem with that. That's their job, and they are out to make money, and good for them. So they have their narrative too on it, and I agree with that. But at the end of the day, like you just said, though, I just don't think the cure comes from Tallahassee. The cure comes from local communities looking for a cure. And like we do in many other social issues in our communities in the past, is that One law is not going to change everything for 67 counties. The communities need to be empowered to cure it themselves.
And I do, Tom, I hope you agree that
Yep.
we have some stuff we can clean up too, because the arcane mechanisms of getting a project approved, or even understanding what's in the hopper right now, as a citizen looking at it from the outside, it's crazy to try to understand what's coming at you. As I said, we had no idea there was 2,000 apartments being slated 100 feet from our property line. You know, nothing came to us in the mail. There was, until very recently, there was nothing on the website. And even what is on the website is very rudimentary and across the board. So I think we have a lot of work to do. And Tom, you ran on and you've exhibited transparency. And I think Sarasota and the county workings can do a lot more to be more transparent about what we're doing with our land and our zonings.
So we've talked a lot about what isn't working. Maybe let's turn to what are some possible solutions to this, different approaches to creating affordable housing. Is a building moratorium a possibility? I don't think
illegal.
so, because I think, didn't Manatee County try to do that and the
Yeah,
state
it's illegal.
shut them down?
I know that the Live Local Act will not allow you to block all Live Local. You can't say this law doesn't apply. You
Okay.
can't, so that's not, I'm not sure about like a broader, I'm pretty sure they have, I don't know for a fact, but I don't want to give bad information, but it's very not, I don't believe politicians in Tallahassee would like that. They would, they would say they're shutting the door and not letting anyone else in, so.
So what's a better approach? Are there affordable housing options that have been tried in other places that any of you have looked at or heard about that might be workable here?
Carrie, I bet, kind of like what Derek said, we have to remember too is when you do things like moratoriums, there's a lot of people, jobs out there on the line. So we're not here to destroy people's lives. And these are, we need these people in our communities, and we do need to, I guess, grow the right way. I don't have the magic. Remember the Gulf Coast Community Foundation? They did a whole bunch of work on it. They had a lot of studies done on it. The Bransick Foundation, just a lot of different things. I don't know. I certainly, and not a one, have the proper decision for it. I wish I did, but I do know that Live Local is not going to solve it. It's just going to ruin some other people's property values if Live Local is done the way that they want to do it.
I know that, again, I think Live Local in its pure form is a great idea. And Sarasota Station, I think, is what Mark Vengroff is working on, which my understanding is that project has languished for decades, started by his father, I think.
Yes.
And it really got traction now because of Live Local. And that's a great example. Now, we can debate whether the folks that are going to live there are truly the most needy, but it's within the urban boundary, and it's close to jobs, and it's close to transportation. Home run.
Yeah, my understanding is Mark went below what was required. He might have, I think he has units at 80% and below. So he's, and from my understanding of what he's told people about that project. So.
Is his a Live Local project?
The Sarasota Station is a Live Local
is.
project.
Okay.
And he does a lot of things himself to save costs.
Right.
He'll do a lot of representation, everything. And one thing, Carrie, you're asking about, if people go on our website with the county, we have a sheet there that shows about a lot of the things that have changed over the last 5-10 years by the county commissioners about auxiliary dwelling units, zoning rules, all these different things to try to help keep costs down. But it's just not the total answer, but certainly the county government, well before I got on the board, has made some concessions on some things. They call mother-in-law suites, but they're really auxiliary dwelling units. So many times you have multi-families living there. You got the kids living in an ADU behind a house, very much like the Europeans now, is how that's becoming. So I don't know if it's helpful, but it certainly has
not a
cured the problem.
large-scale solution.
Yeah.
Right.
I think his discussion about how you could provide incentives to developers with already existing units, that's not a bad idea. I think that there's also the theory is, and many times with, I believe this is the theory behind Live Local, is that as you build more units, the units that you already have in existence, those should become, like, there should be more supply, which will start to meet demand, which then there'll be competition in the market to drop the prices. So, I mean, that is a potential solution, and we have seen a lot of apartment projects being built. It's just whether or not they actually rent the units and what pace they rent them at.
Yeah, well, I wonder if you're living in a currently, let's say, a $1,500 apartment, whether you're going to be able to move to one of these new apartments that are renting at $2,300. I'm not sure that you'll be able to vacate that old one.
Yeah.
So on our board, we have John Davis, who's a former developer in another state, who has researched the idea of giving incentives for existing, already built properties. And it's not a novel idea. It's been done other places. And Carrie, I think the answer here is there is no one answer. It certainly is not some bill that just takes away something that has existed forever, right? Forever here in Florida, is the ability for local folks to make their own decisions. And in my opinion, we're seeing firsthand what happens when those types of things, those decisions get made.
And do you think it's reached a point at this point, is it because we have a lame duck governor that people are seeing that there's the potential to change this attitude from Tallahassee? Why is this happening now? Why is the pushback happening now?
I think it's largely because we're starting to see the impacts of development in areas that doesn't have the infrastructure, and also the inability. I mean, you had Senate Bill 180. You've had many examples where the state has preempted local governments, and I think some people are starting to get a bit fed up with it. So, it's also not just like one side. I think both, like, Democrats and Republicans are equally frustrated with losing local control.
You're starting to see more and more chatter about why do we have local governments if the state's going to be making such fundamental decisions? And it's an interesting conversation. Why do we need all these levels if one level is going to preempt everything?
How much is preemption tied to this administration? Do you think if we have a different administration that will change?
In the future, what one would hope in November, we'll see change in administration will happen, and we'll see if anything will be returned back to local governments. I think many times it's hard to change it and send it back, but certainly the people watching it, people vote. I mean, when you put enough pressure on the elected officials, that's when change starts to happen. So you saw a lot of the influence go from county governments now into Tallahassee, the money. So, you know, it used to be 8, 9, 10 years ago, it was all local. St. Johns County felt it, Manatee County, Sarasota County. So a lot of that shift in funding is going towards legislative delegation people now who make the laws and their preemption. So at the end of the day, it always boils down to is, are you following who represents you, how they're voting and really representing you? Are they representing your best interests? And I think that's always happened in government, right? I hope that it'll change and some might come back to us. I can live with scrutiny. I would rather be scrutinized for making an exception myself instead of having Tallahassee make me answer to him because I couldn't. I would rather Tatum Ridge be mad at me for me making the exception and giving that away to build on, which is what we're designed to do, than Tallahassee tell me that I can't do that and receive the scrutiny. I'd rather stick up for them because of my loss of ability to represent them than to let Tallahassee tell me how I'm going to represent them. That's just where I'm at.
I think it's a unique point. There's a lot of things that are coming together now. Part of it's economics, where we've kind of reached a certain max. We're seeing so much development, and I think a lot of folks are saying enough's enough. I was shocked at the most recent election cycle. There were 2 Republican tents, and I did not understand why there'd be 2 different Republican tents, and there were Democrats and independents, but that shocked me that they were competing. And it was because of this notion that the current administration up through Tallahassee, has a very myopic view, and it's not really what a lot of folks want. So I hope that the fact that there was the beginnings of some splintering of the old crowd, then maybe there will be some hope in the future.
And just so everybody knows, as a Republican, my wife and I had our own tent. So, right, Trace? We had our own tent. We stayed out from underneath the tents.
You're listening to a discussion of Florida's Live Local Act and the future of local affordable housing on Talk of the Town. I'm your host, Carrie Seidman, and I'm talking with Commissioner Tom Knight, journalist Derek Gilliam, and citizen activist Matt Procaccini from StayTRU. And we're going to turn now, because we're starting to wind down and run out of time, but we took some questions from the audience before the show began, and I want to turn to those questions now. And I'm just going to throw them out there, and whichever of you gentlemen would like to take a stab at them, help yourself. Do you think affordable housing should be encouraged through the Florida tax credit program with existing multifamily before using the Live Local Act?
Absolutely. I think that's a great example of let's use what we have first.
So how would that work? I mean, briefly, do you know?
I don't know the specifics of that, but I think it conceptually falls into if we have some existing properties, maybe they need to be rehabbed, maybe they need to be improved, that's fine. Maybe there's a tax incentive available to an owner or developer for that. But let's use the infrastructure that we have already before we. One of the biggest challenges we've seen, Tom will talk about, is that the budget here has exploded, and we're still having trouble balancing it. And who's going to pay for all the extra roads and all the extra sewers and all that stretch out into the eastern county when we have a lot of that stuff already built here?
And people have to remember, over the last 15 years, all the laws on concurrency and have changed, where the level services, where development used to be able to help pay for itself through level services, those have all changed. So that makes it harder on us at local governments, that we have these preemptions telling us what we can and can't do, but they don't have the cure for our roads. The roads are still our problem. And so that makes it even harder. So I think that's a great dialogue I would hope that the legislative body might have about tax credits. I don't think people, from a capitalistic standpoint, developers aren't going to make as much money. So that's a dialogue Tallahassee needs to have.
Derek, you want to add anything?
I've not done any reporting on that program, so I don't know.
All right, our next question. Do you think the Live Local Act should be amended to eliminate any properties over 5 acres to avoid community input to development? I don't know if it meant impact to development. And any.
I mean, 5 acres seems a bit small to do an apartment project on, so I'm not. I think just a relook at the law is probably required more so than tweaking it in ways that are like acreage size. I mean, maybe you have a better.
Well,
I think people should always have a say, and oftentimes even here in the city of Sarasota, all the projects are approved administratively. In many ways, Live Local is just taking that to the county now.
Right.
So,
I've heard, don't know if it's true, but I think legally it's true, that even on a 2-acre parcel of RE land, you could put up 50 units. And that would be in a neighborhood with other 2-acre properties. And not all of the properties have to be also with apartment units. So it comes down to a balance between providing affordable housing and also respecting folks that have chosen to live in a certain lifestyle. I do agree with the question, though, that we need to stick back to the original intent of the law. Let's utilize the infrastructure we have already.
Okay, one more. This just says, infrastructure, roads, schools, water, hurricane evacuation. Who pays for the density bump?
We all do. Yeah, Tom mentioned concurrency, which I didn't understand. It's a big deal. What that means is that a huge, like the 2,200 they're talking about building on the golf course, the builder doesn't need to worry about whether there's sewers in the streets or whether the roads are capable of handling that traffic. There used to be a time where the county and the developer had to work together because the sewer line had to be in place before the building could get built. That makes sense. Well, that's no longer true. That concurrency was taken away by the state, I think. The state, again, another example of home rule being attacked. So now the developer has no worries about that. And who's left holding the bag? We are.
We just did our mobility study because we know, I think it was, what was it, Derek, 1.7 billion?
I think, yeah, 1.3.
1.3 billion, and
There-
where do you start? You know, where do you start with, wow, we need roads, and everybody's tired of being stuck in traffic? And then you talk about mobility fees, so we need to build more so we get more mobility fees, so it's just like, it's the definition of insanity. You just keep doing the same thing over and over again with the same result.
That discussion, my colleague, Christian Casal, wrote that story. And they had, I believe the county has like $500 million in transportation funds,
Right.
and they need 1.7 billion.
Yeah.
So
We're a little short.
just a little bit. And they were talking about at that meeting what taxes they were going to add to citizens to cover that gap.
No, we did not, Derek.
Okay.
We're not talking. The
That was-
consultant brought up ways to create revenue, and so you know we're sitting there. And I think I said at that meeting, I don't think there's a flavor here to raise taxes right now. So, but we need to know we have, right? Whether we raise taxes, ask for referendum, whatever it is, we don't know yet. But one thing that we do know, and this community knows, is that we need roads, we need infrastructure. How that's going to work out, I don't know. But certainly. The change of the laws from 2011, Burt Harris, concurrency, you can Google it over the last 10 years. We've just been stripped of our authority to have development pay its own way for levels of service.
Doesn't the Live Local Act give tax exemptions also to,
For the affordable units.
for the affordable units?
To property
So how much
taxes.
of a financial impact is that?
Well, I mean, I'm not positive. I know that other areas have got rid of those taxes. There's a chart prepared by a part of the, I think it's like the Schenberg Center at UF, and if you have a deficit of units in the 120% bracket, then you can't get rid of the tax incentives. Other communities have a positive number there, and they have more units than they need. And that's like Hillsborough County and Pasco County and maybe Pinellas County. I think Pasco hasn't. I think it's Pinellas and Hillsborough have gotten rid of that exemption and saying we're not going to subsidize. And I'm not sure if it's like a year by year or is like when the project gets built. I still haven't fully done the reporting there, but there's possible to get rid of that tax incentive. But it would be, I can't remember what it exactly was, but it's some percent of those units would be exempt from taxes.
We could get deep into the weeds here, but
Yeah.
we're running out of time. And as my grandma would say, I wish I had a crystal ball to see how all this is going to turn out. But I'd like you to join me in thanking our guests today, Sarasota County Commissioner Tom Knight, Derek Gilliam from the Suncoast Searchlight, and Mac Procaccini of StayTRU. After this show, Talk of the Town is going on hiatus for the summer. They're going to do some renovations here in our venue, so you'll come back in September to a new look. If you'd like to listen to any of the programs that you've missed, you can find them on the WSLR archive. I would recommend you check in on the last show we did for the Giving Challenge, which was a NPR Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me style local quiz show. Which was notable mostly for my ineptness as a comedian and show host. But also, if you have any suggestions of topics you'd like us to cover next fall or particular people that you would like to hear from, please email me. It's Carrie, C-A-R-R-I-E, @WSLR.org. And having been the booker for these shows, I know that sometimes I need a lot of lead time to try to pull people on. So please let us know what you'd like to hear about. And now, as is our tradition on this show, before we close, we'd like to ask our guests for their prediction of what the headline will be, the next coming headline on this Live Local issue. And they can be funny, they can be sarcastic, they can be hopeful. Let's start with you, Matt.
So I see a future headline that Carrie and Derek share the Pulitzer Prize for the expose on Live Local.
Unlikely, but I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Tallahassee picks up real affordable housing solution to replace Live Local.
Bravo.
You stole mine, but that's okay. Well, on the same lines is that, we will be getting a new administration into Tallahassee with the hopes that home rules return back to the county municipal governments.
All right. Any final thoughts? Anyone didn't get a chance to say?
No, when I talk about tents, we're welcome under both tents, Tracy and I. So I think you know me, Carrie. So we just try to get along with everybody and stay too deep out of the politics and represent the community no matter who they are. That's just where we're at in our life.
Well, I think I speak for a lot of us when I say how much we appreciate what you're doing, Tom, as well as Derek is doing incredible work at the Searchlight. And Matt, anybody who's only lived here 5 years and has already jumped into the citizen pool, advocacy pool, we're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie.
I'd like to give thanks to the WSLR staff, volunteers, and listeners, and also to all of you who supported us so generously in the Giving Challenge. It was a really successful campaign for us here at WSLR, and I think you'll notice what it's allowing us to do in the future. Stay tuned after this show for the WSLR Newsweek in Review with coverage from our new ACE reporter, Noah Bookstein. Meanwhile, I'd like to say to all the women listening who have taken on the hardest, most challenging, and also most rewarding job in the world, happy Mother's Day to you. And to everyone, this is your host, Carrie Seidman, saying thanks for listening. And please take care of each other and carry on.
Hope we weren't too tight.